So we got some new iPhones. The keynote just finished. Tim Cook, he walked off stage. Of course, I wasn't there at the event, but that's not much of a surprise to most of you guys if you guys saw my tweet. But to be honest, I can cover everything from here because we have all the details now regarding the new XS, XS Max, and iPhone XR. Not really sure what the R stands for. If you guys have some ideas, I'd like to see down in the comments what you think the R stands for. But 3 new iPhone models, one less expensive, which to me is kind of the interesting development. It's something that had been speculated. People wondered, is there going to be a cheaper iPhone? The way that Tim was talking about it, he was implying that this was the iPhone for everyone. But then when he said the price, I was a little bit concerned that it might not be for everyone because it starts at $750 for the iPhone XR, XR, XS, XS Max, who knows what we're going to call these things. Anyhow, not exactly cheap compared to other smartphones that are out there in the Android space, smartphones that I've covered here on the channel. $750, I guess maybe it seems cheap compared to the XS price, which is starting at $1,000, and then the Max, which starts at $1,100. Compared to the smartphone marketplace, I wouldn't call that entry level by any means. Now, the biggest difference between the 3 models is the fact that the XR uses an LCD display compared to OLED, which is on the XS and XS Max. Also, the XR is going to be available in a lot more colors. There is a blue, a white, a black, yellow, coral, and product red. So tons of color options, kind of reminiscent of the iPhone 5C. Like, we're going to give you a bunch of bright colors on the more budget model iPhone, whereas the premium models are only available in silver, space gray, and gold. Display wise, the size goes anywhere from 5.8 inches up to 6.5. The smallest unit is the XS, which shares its form factor with the previous version 10. The biggest, the Max, is 6.5 inches. So the screen is large, but the form factor is similar to the previous generation Plus model, the iPhone 8 Plus. Now, the notch is still there. It's the same size. It takes up as much of the display. It's still got the same tech built in for face unlock and so on. And that brings me to another point. There's no more home button fingerprint scanner version of the iPhone. If you want a new iPhone, you are now in the Face ID realm. You must use Face ID or an old school passcode. It's all gesture based, and there's some cohesiveness now amongst the whole lineup. They're all sharing a very similar form factor. Now, the other difference with the cheaper model XR is that it'll have a single camera, one 12 megapixel wide angle camera compared to the dual setup on the XS and XS Max. Front facing camera will be the same on all units, 7 megapixels. They've all got Face ID, A12 Bionic chip. The water resistance on the entry level XR is going to be 1 meter for 30 minutes, while the other 2 are sealed a bit better. They can apparently handle 2 meters underwater for 30 minutes. When it comes to storage capacity, the XR will max out at 256. Of course, that'll elevate your price point significantly. The other premium models will go all the way up to 512 gigabytes of local storage. Also, Apple went ahead and added a dual SIM setup. Now, in the keynote, Phil Schiller was trying to break down why you might want a dual SIM setup, but many parts of the world are already super familiar with it on the Android side. For people who travel, people who have a data plan on one SIM and then use another SIM for voice, something like that. What I think this is really a play for international markets. I know customers in China and India and other places really like to have a dual SIM option, so that's now in the iPhone as well. Now, something that surprised me on the XR version of the new iPhone is the screen resolution, 326 ppi. You have a display that's 1792 by 828. Pretty low resolution by today's standards. I mean, I have to see this in person to determine whether or not that's enough pixels. Some people get crazy with pixels, basically assuming that they need the highest resolution possible. If you want to go pixel hunting, bring it close to your face, you'll probably see some pixels on this display. I was expecting it to be a little higher resolution, but of course, they were trying to bring the price point down, though I still don't think they brought it down far enough nonetheless, some people prefer LCD panels for a multitude of reasons, color accuracy, and so on. My personal taste is OLED with the amazing vibrance, viewing angles, and so on. OLED is going to exist only on the premium 10S, the 10R. It's stuck with this 6.1 inch, what they're calling liquid retina. It's an LCD panel. It's a true tone display. It also doesn't feature 3D touch. They took that out. They didn't mention it in the keynote, but here on the spec sheet, you can see that the cheaper model does not have 3D touch. Not a big deal, not something that I use frequently. As you can see here, video mode is similar on all three models with the exception of the optical zoom that you'd be able to get out of the dual lens setup. Otherwise, you're getting 4K video recording up to 60 FPS on all three camera modules. Now, it seems like Apple might be hiding the actual battery stats here when it comes to the milliamp hour rating. They're just stating that the 10S lasts up to 30 minutes longer than the iPhone 10, the 10S Max up to 1.5 hours longer than the iPhone 10, and the 10R up to 1.5 hours longer than the iPhone 8 Plus. To me, it's like, just tell us the size of the battery, please. So I don't think we're gonna see any massive batteries in these units, as has been the case for a lot of Apple devices recently, but they're saying it's gonna be a little bit better on battery than the previous generation. Interestingly, they say that the 10R will actually have the best battery rating for internet use, video playback. That must have something to do with the fact that it has the LCD panel, possibly. Now, a little more detail on the SIM card setup. It's not two physical nano SIM slots like you would see on some other Android smartphones. Instead, Apple is using eSIM technology. This is the same tech that they're using in Apple Watches and iPads, where a carrier can essentially program a pre-built, an electronic SIM, that's what the E stands for, to go along with the nano SIM that's already in there. So you could have two numbers on standby, two different accounts with the wireless provider, although one of them is going to be eSIM and the other will be a physical nano SIM. Unfortunately, Apple didn't switch over to USB Type-C. We're still on the Lightning connector. Of course, we can unlock faster charging with different chargers, but I would have liked to see Apple move to a standard that's kind of ubiquitous in the marketplace right now. The Type-C connector is something that's everywhere, including Apple's own products with the MacBook Pro and so on. It ain't here yet, not on the iPhones. All right, so there it is. You have 3 new iPhones, and now it's kind of time for my take, my thoughts. I watched the whole keynote myself, and the thing that struck me was how Tim was referencing this 10R version as the iPhone for more people, that the more accessible version of the iPhone. Of course, we've been talking about this for a while now. The fact that Apple really only plays in the premium space, at least with new products. In the past, they just tell you to go out and get the older version if you can't afford the new one, with a few exceptions like the iPhone SE and so on, the 5C. There's been a few along the way. But I'm just not sure that this price on the 10R is competitive enough. Of course, as customers, we can be more demanding. We can hope to see lower price points. I just felt that there was so much happening in the mid-range of the market, around $500. It would have been cool to see this device come in somewhere around $599, somewhere more aggressive, so people in other parts of the world could really approach this device. It's already more expensive for various reasons, even than the sticker price in North America. So $750 in the US could actually mean more than a $750 equivalent in some of the countries it's going to be sold in. That and the fact that you're taking a step back to an LCD panel, so there's definitely some cost savings there. You're having a single lens camera setup, of course. You have a different IP rating. I just don't understand really why you would get the 10R unless you really need that extra $250 in your pocket. I'm sitting there thinking that jump at that point, once you're already at $750, it's like, I don't know, maybe just go for the 10S. It's a really complicated pricing structure there. And I think it's part of the reason why Apple gave so many different color choices for the 10R. To try to show people that, like, you can express yourself with this particular model. You can get product red or Lamborghini yellow or the blue, this really vibrant blue here, that like maybe this model represents something else. I get it. It's probably got a great camera on it. You might not need the dual lens setup. You might not need the zoom lens that's included on those other models. And maybe you don't care so much about OLED. There's going to be some customers that will line up with this one, but as far as making a statement to the rest of the industry about, hey, we're going to compete, we're going to come down in price to show you we can make a great product at a more approachable price. I'm not sure they achieved that at $750. Of course, for the hardcore Apple fans out there, you guys might be satisfied, but it's a new iPhone for $750. That's not something we've seen before. But for me, it's not really enough. And that might have to do with the fact that I'm just so exposed to the grumblings that are happening at the low end of the marketplace. What we're getting spec-wise for much lower price tags is really impressive right now, and you have to assume Apple is also paying attention. Now, there could be many reasons for this, right? They may be thinking we can't possibly dilute our brand. We are a premium brand. We must be $700 and above. We can't possibly dip into the 600s, let alone the 500s. And whatever, more power to them. That's their choice. But my feeling on the matter is these emerging markets are going to begin to dictate other happenings in the global marketplace. If these users in other countries where these price points are less approachable, if they start their smartphone life experience on an alternative platform, it's going to be tougher to switch them over in the future. And if that entry price point is already cost prohibitive, that might never happen. $750 is better than where Apple has been before, but for me, it's not good enough. That thing should have come in lower. Of course, I'm not sitting here looking at the actual unit cost, the production cost, and so on, but I can guarantee you there's a healthy margin baked into that device, which is the case for almost all Apple products. If you look at the profit figures in the smartphone marketplace, most of them belong to Apple because they can command these higher price points. But my feeling is that these indications at the lower end, these indications at the mid-range level of the smartphone game are going to start to trickle. They're going to start to move up market a little bit. They're going to start to have an impact and an effect on the whole marketplace. So for me, it's not a question of if, it's just a question of when. It's still a bit of a slap in the face to those emerging markets where people are used to getting some pretty amazing specs for a lot less money. That's my take, okay? This is pretty much what we expected to see. Nonetheless, I think a lot of people are going to be excited about the XS Max especially. You have a form factor similar to the iPhone 8 Plus, and you're getting a huge display. I mean, on an iPhone, it's not something we've seen. A 6.5-inch display, I think people are going to like that. I hope it has good battery life. If you're into it, if you were into the iPhone 10 to begin with, that might be the way to go. If you're not interested in the bigger model, I don't know if there's much of a reason to upgrade. If you have an iPhone 10, do you really need the XS? Do you want to spend another $1,000 a year later for a speed enhancement, for some very slight enhancements? Probably not. Anyway, look, there they are. They're what you expected to see. The price points don't line up perfectly for me. Nonetheless, 3 new iPhones. Thank you very much, Tim Cook. I'll get my hands on these as soon as I can. I'm going to have to walk into a store and buy them because you know Apple, they're not going to send them to you. They didn't invite me to the event. Maybe because I tell it like it is. I don't know. Down in the comments, what does the R stand for? iPhone 10R. R?